In today's video, I'm going to show you how I run my live streams using two audio interfaces and how, if you're a music teacher or any sort of teacher who teaches online via Zoom or anything, how you can use the exact same setup to get high quality audio sent to your students or your clients. So what we're talking about is getting high quality audio from the voice. That's what you're hearing here. And my guitar is sent through the same system. The DI signal. I'm using an Axe-Fx. It's the floor model, the Axe 8. That's where all my tones are coming from, and I'm sending that into one of my interfaces. So, like I said, two interfaces. So why do I do that? I'm going to explain exactly why I use two interfaces. So an audio interface is where we're plugging in our microphones. It's acting as a sound card, and we're going to use one of them to run our DAW. So a DAW, a digital audio workstation, would be like Pro Tools or even GarageBand. I've done the same exact thing with GarageBand. I prefer Pro Tools, but any DAW will do for this. There are other setups here where you can use software, but I prefer to use two interfaces. I already had two, so it was easy for me, and it just seems like it would bog down my computer less to use external hardware as opposed to adding more software, because Streamlabs OBS and streaming and doing video calls can really bog down your computer depending on the age of it. So I have two interfaces that I'm using, and the choice of interface here I don't think really matters as long as it works really nicely with your DAW. So I use an Avid 11 rack, which is an older interface. I've just had it for a long time. It has a few inputs. It has some amp modeling stuff for guitar players if you're familiar with that. But essentially, I have two inputs. I have one for my microphone. I have one for my guitar. And you're hearing my voice exactly how it's going in to the interface and into Pro Tools, same as my guitar. So a nice high quality sound to be sent over to clients or students or people watching me on the live stream. So that first interface, that 11 rack, I'm using that to run my Pro Tools session. So that's the hardware running my Pro Tools session, my DAW session. So it's controlling my inputs and my outputs within my recording session. So I said recording session, but I'm actually not recording anything. I'm just using it more of a mixer. So I have input monitoring engaged, and I'll show that in a little bit. So I'm able to hear myself, but I'm not recording anything. Again, just using this sort of as a mixer, as a digital mixer. So that 11 rack is running Pro Tools. I have my microphone plugged into the 11 rack. I have my guitar plugged into the Axe 8, which is a separate unit. You don't really have to worry about that. It's just a guitar pedal, and that's running into my 11 rack as well. So essentially, microphone, guitar running into the 11 rack. That 11 rack is running a Pro Tools session, which I can then mix down and add some nice compression to my voice. I can add any reverb to the guitar or anything like that. Then I can mix it down, put the levels exactly where I want them. Now from there, you would think I could just use the 11 rack to run my live stream or to run my video chat. And the problem with that is you'll run into various issues, one of which you can get a hard pan left and right for your voice and guitar, and we want to avoid that. We want to make sure everything is mixed nicely and stereo, and you're just hearing it just like you're hearing this now. So that's where Pro Tools comes into place. It mixes that down and puts it where I want it within the mix. Now, Streamlabs OBS or your video chat service is not going to know that you're running Pro Tools. So it's just going to take in the signal from your mic and your guitar and run it straight through its program, completely bypassing Pro Tools. It has no idea that's being run. So that's another reason that that first interface is not going to work to run your stream or your video chat. So this is where the second interface comes into play. So I have, again, mic, guitar running into my 11 rack, interface number 1. That's then running Pro Tools, mixing everything down nicely. So typically I could run the outputs of the 11 rack to my nice studio monitors, and I'd be able to hear a nice mix back to myself when I'm recording or when I'm using Pro Tools at all. So instead of doing that, I send the outputs of the 11 rack to the inputs of the second interface. My second interface is a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. Again, the interface doesn't really matter as long as it works for your system. So I have the outputs of the 11 rack running into the two inputs of my 2i2, my Focusrite Scarlett. Now that's taking all the mixed sound from the 11 rack, it's running it into the Scarlett, and then I can use my Scarlett as the input and output source for my stream. So I can set that for input output in Streamlabs OBS or in Zoom or in Google Meet or in Skype, and essentially it's acting as the liaison or the in-between of Pro Tools to my client or to the student or to the people watching the live stream. So it's taking in all that nice mixed down Pro Tools audio it's taking that in and then it's able to send it back out to whichever service I'm using, whether it's a stream or a call. So there's a couple things with the Focusrite to keep an eye on. Obviously, you want to make sure both of those inputs, since I'm using two of them, they need to be even. So I need to make sure that they're both at the same exact level on the actual interface. So it's got two gain knobs, one for each channel. And I want to make sure those are even. So the nice thing with the Scarlett is that there are three lights that appear: green, yellow, or red. Yellow and red, you're pushing the gain quite a bit. So you want to keep it in the green. So I just make sure it's always in the green and I'm good to go and I have a nice output to my stream or my call. Now, one other thing you could do in there too is press the direct monitor button. That'll also allow you to hear everything really nicely. So now we have the 11 rack running my Pro Tools session and mixing everything down nicely. Now that 11 rack, I'm going out of the 11 rack into the second interface, the Scarlett, and that's receiving all that nice mixed down sound. And I use my Scarlett and I set that Scarlett as the input and the output within my video call or within Streamlabs OBS, and I get the exact result that I want. I do not want to set the output, so that means the sound coming back to me, as the first interface, the 11 rack, because then it creates a feedback loop and it'll just kind of keep going over and over again. So it's got to be set to the second interface. The input and the output needs to be set to the second interface. Now there's software that does this that I don't own, I don't have. You can look that up. I'm sure you'll find something like that. But if you do happen to have two interfaces like I do, I have a studio interface, one that stays in a rack, and then I have like kind of a more portable one. So I just use those in conjunction. Now, one of the coolest things I found is how to send tracks to the other person. So whether it's a backing track that I'm soloing over, or maybe a song that I'm working on with a student, I can also share that as well. And the student or the client or the person on the live stream is going to hear it exactly how I'm hearing it, just like you're hearing my voice, just like you're hearing the guitar. So the way you do that is I'll show you here on the screen now. And I'll show you a couple more things while we're here too that I skipped over here. So like I said in Pro Tools before, I have my mic channel and I have my guitar channel, which is Axe8, which is just the pedal I'm using. So I have a couple other options here, but you can see that my input monitoring is on, and you can also see that I have signal there. So that's great, perfect. So that's really simple in Pro Tools, and the same thing is gonna happen with maybe GarageBand or Logic or whatever else you're using. So the way to get tracks to go over to your client, or like I said, the people watching the live stream, is you set the output of your computer to the first interface, in my case, the Avid 11 rack. So I set my output of my actual computer to the Avid 11 rack. Now I can pull up any song from Spotify or from YouTube, and it's going to play it through the 11 rack, which is getting sent to my Focusrite, my Scarlett. So it's sending the signal to the Scarlett, which is being used as my input output. So now I'm hearing my perfectly mixed down voice and guitar, as well as how the song I'm sending through YouTube or Spotify is mixed in as well. So this is one final step that also helps. You got to set the output of your computer to interface number one, the one that's running your DAW. So in my case, the 11 rack. So this is how I do this. There are other ways to do this, and I know sometimes with certain interfaces and certain setups that one can kind of work. But for me, I really like to be able to send tracks right away. So I like to have those two interfaces set up at all times. So I am doing, and I will be doing, a lot more educational videos like this, whether it be about live streaming or about guitar, about music theory. So if you like what you've seen, you like what you've heard and learned from today, please subscribe and like for more content. So give this setup a shot and let me know if you have any questions in the comments.